Hey, can you hear me now? Miss Cheryl, can you hear me now? All right. Working out tech issues as per usual. And I think we've got it. Hey, can you hear me now? I overpaid for this here Yeti mic. Let's make sure it's working. Excellent. Thanks so much. Hey, tech issues. What are you going to do? So this morning I had the opportunity to talk to over 200 people in about 20 different countries, and it was a blast. Most of them were in India and the Middle East, and they were HR professionals. And I was talking about authenticity. But you know what I did? I actually got permission. And you never know on an online talk if someone wants you to do an instructional talk. Hey, there's 5 things to consider, and talk about some of the research and what have you, which I love doing. Or to actually use stories. The thing you would use in a keynote, or a lot of us would use in a keynote, really just deliver some stories. And they were interested in that. And so I did that and delivered 3 stories. And it got me excited about talking to you for just a few minutes today, because storytelling is so fun, so powerful, so underutilized. It's always fun at least once, twice a year to talk about it. All right, we have streamers joining us, and apparently they can hear as well now. That's lovely. All right, so after a great talk this morning, I wanted to share with you something else about talking. The TEDx Tamu talk, my second TEDx, is coming up. It was canceled thanks to the virus, but it is now back on the books. March 14th, if you just go and Google TEDx Tamu, that's TAMU, it stands for Texas A&M University. It's being hosted over at Texas A&M. Very excited. I'll be talking about some aspects of leadership and where it meets creativity and innovation. And it wasn't clear for a while if they were going to let us do this or if they were going to reschedule. And they are now signaling informally they're going to reschedule. I'm not sure if it's on their website yet, but if you just go Google TEDx Tamu, TAMU, you'll get all the details when they are finally posted. Lots to talk about, especially that guy. Very happy to tell you that my second book of stories, Live Hard, is now available. This is the, back up just a little, this is the proof I received a few days ago. Got a big pile coming at me shortly. A lot of special VIPs in my world I want to send it to, and I hope that you'll check it out as well. If you know anything about me, you probably heard of or maybe read Show Your Ink. I really love that book because it was my first opportunity to take a risk and just publish a book of stories. And it turns out it's the most popular thing I've ever done. People love a good story. They're instructional for reasons that we'll talk about today. And after doing a revision of the Little Black Book of Leadership that people enjoy, and then writing a straight up relationship book called The 10 Delusions, you'll see behind me there, I finally got around to my second batch of stories for a new book. This one's focused a little more specifically on trying to become successful in life, living fully, taking principled risks, embracing creativity and innovation in your career. All 20 new stories. So if you like some of my stories, just say to yourself, have I heard all 40 of the published Dr. Do It stories? Because I now have 40, and more than that actually, but published in 2 books, I have 40, and 20 of them are brand new and Live Hard. I hope you'll go over to Amazon. If Miss Cheryl is kind enough to drop the link, you can go over and help me make this guy really well known, just like the last one. I think you're going to find it's what you would expect from me. It is personal, it is funny, it's emotional, it is practical and helpful. And frankly, you'll never get so much out of a fast read as you'll get out of one of my books. At least that's my goal and my hope for you. I'm excited. Well, it's chock full of stories, so let's talk about stories. Hey, Ashish, how are you? Elizabeth, all right, good to see you. Brian, hello, sir. Glad you can hear. Here's the thing. Everyone knows stories are great, and somehow in professional life, we resist them. I don't know why we do that. I think it's because we believe erroneously that to be at work is to be professional. And to be professional is to somehow be very dry and matter of fact, on point with no emotion or anecdotes or stories. I don't know why people think that exactly, to be sure. But I do know that it's not helpful. I do know that the best communicators, the most successful leaders of teams are people who know how to spin a story. So let's think about that. Why do stories connect so well? Why are they such a backbone of my career? And the answer, I think, is fairly straightforward. Think about your experience and tell me if this makes sense to you. They are relatable. They make learning completely commonsensical and relatable. Why? Because there are characters who have issues and face challenges and find resolutions, and maybe even there's some humor thrown in as well. And that makes any type of learning a little easier. And I don't care what kind of technical world you're in, if that's part of your career, stories can be useful by professionals and leaders in any area. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Take my word for it. I've talked to folks or coached and advised folks in every industry you can imagine. And connecting with people emotionally is valued, increasingly understood, but not used enough. And one of the best vehicles is stories. So what do I want to do today for the next few minutes? I want to talk just a little about structure and content and delivery, but more importantly, I want to give you a story as if I were giving a keynote, and then maybe debrief it just a little bit. And if you're interested, ask a question right there in the chat. Just drop a comment, and I would love to answer your question when we're done. So when I think about stories, look, I've written about this many times. I've got multiple courses on this topic over at my favorite online learning platform, LinkedIn Learning. If you've not seen my courses there, you should definitely go over and check it out. I've still got, I think, 30 plus courses at LinkedIn, and I believe 3 of them directly address the topic we're talking about today, or parts of it. They're about public speaking, overcoming nerves, making a keynote, things of that nature. Today, just talking about stories. So when I think about structure first, I think every story has a beginning, middle, and end. That's very important. A beginning, a middle, and an end. Or I like to say it this way, it has 3 acts like most plays. 3 acts of a play, right? So in the first, you get the protagonist or the main characters, and whatever the main issue might be, that's act 1. Act 2, something unexpected happens, conflict, difficult things face our protagonist. That's act 2. Act 3, we're going to wrap this up. Why? Crazy climax happens of some sort and a solution, hopefully, that people observing it will find useful or interesting or memorable, and we can put the story to rest. That is the usual, simple, basic arc of a story or a play. And most stories you would tell in a professional context should follow that. You've got to have characters that people can kind of understand and see and relate to. They've got to get involved in things that matter to the audience, the people listening. And there's got to be some sort of conflict or problem that is then resolved, maybe resolved in a climactic fashion. So I was thinking, I'm talking about this topic to you, and I'm thinking, what do I show them? What story do I use? And as I was preparing for this talk this morning, I realized there's a story I used to use all the time. It was a standard part of the keynotes I did up until about, 5 or 6 years ago. Some of you watching, if you've been around long enough, you might have heard this story. It's a great story. It's no longer, I've been doing this long enough that I have stories I still love that I know audiences love. They're no longer in my small rotation of 4, 5, 6 stories I might go use at a gig when I'm hired to speak. Just because you need to make new material and you evolve your focus and thus the nature of your stories as you move along year by year. It's called the Ham story. That's going to sound strange to some of you. H-A-M, the Ham story. I think when I first, when I still used this story, I ended up writing about it. I put it as one of the stories in the book I mentioned earlier called Show Your Ink. I think I called the story, if I can remember correctly, A Man and His Ham, or at least that's what I used to say to audiences. It goes like this. I'm talking to an audience. Imagine me on stage talking to an audience, and I say, do you think that we reward people too much or too little at work? Most people start to say out loud, too little or not enough. And then I go, you're going to be angry at me. The answer tends to be too much. We actually do. We fall over ourselves trying to figure out how to reward people. We need to rethink how we reward people because we can't really get over ourselves. That's one of the biggest problems we have. We do it too often. We don't attach it to great performance, but most importantly, we don't make people feel it for real motivational impact because we don't get over ourselves. You know what? I could lecture, I'm staying with the story, but I'm also giving you some instruction here. I could lecture all day about that topic. I love it. Or I could just tell you this story. I know, just like you do, that rewards have to matter, but I didn't understand it emotionally in my bones as truly impactful. Until one day, I got a phone call. A man said to me, hey, I'm so-and-so, got your name from, he mentioned another person's name. He said, look, I've got some employee issues. Would you come over and talk to me? And I said, sure, I'd love to. Now, this was the president of a $50 million firm, give or take. They are industrialized. They make industrial widgets. Long story short, what they make doesn't matter as much as how he was trying to manage his people. And I was thrilled, always having to go meet a new client. And I walked into this man's office and I shook his hand and sat down, and we started talking about the firm and its evolution. And he was worried about its growth and success, which is amazing, but also changes culture and makes it difficult to stay in touch with people and to reward in a way that really does have impact. And I said, well, tell me, what are some of the things you've been doing? And he just kind of got all happy. And he said, well, we've done a lot of things. We tried, and he started mentioning things that they had done in the past. Well, we did this one thing where we gave away things out of a corporate catalog for 6 months, but I'm not sure anyone felt really motivated by that. And so I tried something else, and he described something else. That one lasted almost a year. And then he switched up again and tried something else. And that one went bye-bye after only a few months. Basically, they had done some predictable, simple, not terribly personal or authentic things. And he could tell I wasn't blown away while he was talking to me. I was kind of just sitting there trying to be polite, and I don't hide things very well at all. And I think he could read that on my face. And so finally he goes, okay, but there is one thing. It's what we're doing right now. And it's really working well. And I said, great. What is it? He goes, well, we have a quarterly meeting where I bring all the employees into a big room. And, I get on stage in the auditorium, right? And I just do the tap dance, and I share the numbers and what's going on with the firm and profits and markets. And I give the state of the company speech. And I said, well, that's pretty great. That can be useful. He goes, yeah. And when I'm done, I call up some people who have been elected as great employees by their peers, and I give them something. And I said, that's also great. So what do you give them? I've seen this work before. What do you give them? And then he said to me something I'll never forget. He looked at me like a proud father. I kid you not. And he said to me, I give them a ham. Now, look, I had just met this gentleman, and I was happy to meet him. And I knew one thing above all else: I could not laugh when he said that. So I suppressed my little giggle, and I just looked at him with a straight face. And I said, that's great. So how's the ham thing working? And he just looked at me and he said, I'm telling you, they love it. People love it. It really stirs them up and gets them going, shows them how much I appreciate what they're doing. And I said, great. I'll take your word for it. You know what? I don't want to take your word for it. Just let me go do my job. And so I went and I talked to people and I observed people, and I did some survey work, and I did a few focus groups on a variety of issues I was working with this firm on. But one of them I really wanted to understand was the ham scheme. And I asked a lot of people pointed questions about what they thought regarding the ham procedure that unfolded at every quarterly meeting. What do you think I learned? Well, it doesn't take a real degree, does it, to help to understand that what I learned was predictable. Everybody, very few exceptions, believed that the ham was silly. They believed that the ham was a great symbol of how disconnected and aloof, how distant from us management sometimes seems. It was a symbol. Now, when you talk about culture at work, one of the things you talk about is shared things, shared stories, shared norms and behaviors, shared objects. The ham was a shared object, a culturally relevant object in a direction that was not intended, a negative thing. Now, it's my job to be very frank as an outside advisor to people who hire me, and I really wanted to go tell Mike was his name, the president of this firm. I wanted to tell Mike what I learned, but I stopped because I knew that the next quarterly meeting was only a couple days away, and I wanted to go watch this for myself. And so I did that. I sat on that information, and I went to the next meeting a few days later. I walked into that big auditorium. I sat in the back just so I could watch people, as I enjoy doing. And the president, boom, at the right time, got on stage, and he did the tap dance, and he told the state of the company, right? He gave the margins and the customers and the profits and all that. And when he was done, he said, as you know, it's time for our quarterly Employee of the Month award ceremony. As soon as he started to say that, I watched the nonverbals in the room switch just like that, from being kind of engaged and positive to mostly not engaged and eye rolling and whatever, because nobody apparently enjoyed what was to come. Sure enough, he stood there and he called out 3 names that day, that day's 3 victims. And he called them up on stage, and they didn't look happy and buoyant, and they just walked kind of glumly on stage. I found out later why they weren't excited at all. They were being recognized, but they weren't excited. I found out later it's because they knew that they would not once but twice be made fun of by their peers, or at least some of their peers. The first time when they walked on stage to receive the ham and shake the man's hand, and the second time when a picture of them holding the ham would no doubt show up in the newsletter that went out to all the employees. I sat in the back of this auditorium watching this unfold, wondering how the president could not be aware of what was going on, but he wasn't. And I watched that day's 3 victims leave the stage carrying their hams. And I resolved then and there, I wanted to know the fate of those hams. And so when the meeting was over, I went and talked to those people and stalked them a little bit. And I found out what became of those hams. And when I did as I'm paid to do. I went to the president's office finally, and I just knock. Hey, you mind if I come in, Mike? I got to tell you something. And he said, okay, sure. I shut the door, and I said, you know what? There's something I need to show you. Would you mind coming with me? He looked a little strange, but he said, okay. And he got up. I opened the door. We walked out, went through Cube Land, a little maze of cubicles, out the front door, around the back of the building, where sat a large industrial-sized dumpster. You've seen them all at work, right? Big, huge, rectangular metal thing. I took the flap, the big plastic flap, and I opened it up. And we looked inside. What was in there? 2 of that day's 3 hams were in the trash. Now, what do you think he did? Well, I'll tell you, it was the first time I thought I was ever going to have to tackle one of my clients. He put a hand here, and I thought he was going to go dumpster diving. He did not, thankfully, but instead, he did start cussing wildly. Words and expletives that were off color and inappropriate that I had not seen or heard anything about for 20 years came out of this man's mouth. He was very angry. Let me give you some coaching advice. When you see that, don't jump in and start coaching. It usually makes things worse. It certainly won't help. You have to allow that horrible emotion to go and come out. And when it's principally out, you can then re-engage a person and start to talk them down. So after his 21st, 22nd strange word that I had almost forgotten came out, I finally started to talk to him, and he interrupted me pretty quick, and he said, bottom line, what should I do about this? And he didn't know what I was going to say. And I did what all great consultants do. I made something up right there on the fly. I said, Mike, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call a meeting next Tuesday. All hands on deck. No exceptions. Everyone needs to be there in the parking lot in front of the building. Now listen, Mike, when 2 o'clock rolls around Tuesday, I want you to show up on the roof. Now it's a 3-story building, I want you to show up on the roof. I want you to bring a ham. You're going to be standing in the center of the roof. No one's going to see you. They're down in the parking lot. You're going to get ready. And at the right time, 2 o'clock, you're going to walk over to that ledge, and you're going to hold that ham, and you're going to give this speech. And basically, I told him, you're going to say, guys, I found the hams in the trash. I can't believe it took me this long to figure out nobody except me apparently likes the hams. It's embarrassing, but at least I know now. And you know what? I bet you guys know each other better than I do. That's why I'm not going to hand out hams anymore. No. I'm going to put together a group of you guys, someone from each department, and let you figure out what would be useful to do because, well, I believe that you'll come up with something maybe even more useful than these silly hams. Now, I told them to give a version of that speech, and I told them people are going to love it because it's you being authentic, it's you being vulnerable, it's you admitting mistakes, and they're going to be smiling and laughing, and I want you to symbolically, safely, right off the ledge there, drop the ham. Drop it because they're going to think it's hilarious, right? So listen, he looked at me and he said, one thing I'll never forget. I'm paying you how much? Because it didn't sound like a smart plan to him. Minutes rolled on, conversation. He decided he was going to do this. So I knew we were going to have fun Tuesday. 2 o'clock rolls around. I'm standing with him on the roof. No one can see us. I give him the ham. He looks at me like, you're about to get fired or I don't know what, but I'm going to do this. So he turns around, goes to the ledge, stands there. We got about 500 people in a parking lot looking up at him, go, what? And he does something that I just don't get to say very often. He gives a great speech. He was succinct and he was authentic and kind, and he did some version of what I just showed you a minute ago. And he got so excited when he was talking because everyone was laughing, and then they started cheering because they saw this person in a new light. They saw and appreciated what he was trying to say, and he got so excited when they reacted that way. When he was done, he didn't safely drop the ham off like he should have, like I instructed him to. He threw the ham like a football way off of the building into the middle of 500 people standing in a parking lot. I was very worried that day someone would get hurt and I might get sued, but thankfully the crowd parted and the ham hit. Now, let me tell you something. Did you know when they manufacture those hams, oh, they put a lot of liquids in there. It exploded into a crazy mess, and I just laughed because it looked really strange. All these people laughing around this big mess of ham. I thought, this is as close to a pagan ritual as anything I'm ever going to see. Now, what happened that day was amazing. Follow me. You ready? They watched a man who was 3 stories physically removed from them become authentic and seem for the first time not removed from them. You follow me? It's amazing what happened, because the next time I went to one of their quarterly meetings and he got on stage, he made a joke. Hey guys, it's time for that quarterly employee recognition ceremony. And people kind of rolled their eyes wondering what he would do. And then he said, as you know, there's going to be no hams. And everyone laughed and looked relieved. And then he brought up some of his colleagues that were managers in different areas to talk about what they had cooked up. And people were interested in listening because their own people, so to speak, were up there on stage. And it was a great moment. It didn't cost him anything, maybe a little risk. And let's be clear, I'm not telling you to go stand on a roof. I'm not telling you to go throw anything. But if you want rewards to matter, if you want them to see you and believe in you, you got to laugh at yourself first. And you got to take the risk associated with being a little more real and authentic. It doesn't cost you a penny, but it is worth $1 million or more. So that's the story, or some version of the story that I've been telling for many, many years. Hey, everybody, good to see you, Ronnie. Lots of familiar faces. I got to tell you, I still love, even though that story is no longer in rotation, telling it. So now, go with me. Why does it work? I've told that story 1,000 times in a million gigs. So why do people laugh? Why do they send me emails? Why do they post versions and comments of it on their blogs at work? Why? Well, number one, they have a structure they can follow. I hope you can watch this. By the way, for those people who have to leave, you will see this on LinkedIn and on YouTube. You can watch that story again and ask yourself, is there a meaningful beginning, middle, and end? Is there, to use the play version of this, is there an act 1, characters and problem, act 2, a problem emerges, act 3, solution, climactic ending? Yes, and that is an arc that people relate to, understand, and can follow. It makes learning useful. It taps emotions, and this is something I have to harp on for a minute. If I wanted to, I could go on at length about what it means to create employee engagement, to build authentic relationships and related topics that are germane to that story. I could quote research. I could be a dorky professor again, or I could explain a few basic ideas very quickly and go into a story, which I just did. And that story taps people emotionally because they've seen versions of it in their own life. They've worked with people who sound a little like those folks. They've faced similar dilemmas. When that happens, emotions go up. Look at it. If you want people watching your presentations, I'm going to break off from stories just for a second and talk about presentations. You have to be real with them and give them something that's easy to relate to. What that means is you present this much, not this much, if you can. Slides that are clean and simple instead of bloated or even no slides, which you're watching me do right now. You have to use material that is engaging, not dry. For example, a spreadsheet with a whole ton of numbers should almost never be seen at a presentation of any size because it's hard to read, makes people get bored, scared, and lost trying to figure out what they're supposed to look at. A chart that simplifies would be better. A picture that simplifies from the chart would be better. An audio or video clip of some important person passionately making the punchline come to life is even better maybe than that picture. You see where I'm going? Use material that engages people. One of my favorite examples by far is a story, which is why I'm going to tell you, if you're interested in this topic, I want you to reach out. Hey, good to see you. Ham content, Laura, good to see you. If you're interested in this topic, I'm going to tell you again, I have multiple courses over at LinkedIn Learning. I hope you'll check out. If you have a question about something you're working on, let me give you some free coaching. You ready? If you've got a presentation coming up and you'd like my 10 cents on what you're doing, how you're approaching it, maybe how you can rethink it, connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a note. I'd be very happy to give you my quick thoughts. And folks, if you love stories, listen. This just came out. I hope you'll find Live Hard. In fact, I believe you're going to find this to be the coolest, best holiday present for any professional that you know. So tell your boss, tell HR about it, because I think this is an ideal candidate, frankly, for a bulk purchase. I'm very excited to share this with my clients in the next few weeks. If I haven't heard from you for a while, I'd like to. Please reach out and let me know about some of your wins or some of the things you're struggling with. If you haven't been to drdoit.com for a while, stroll on over there, check out the blog, see what I'm up to. And of course, if you haven't done it, sign up for the newsletter. I hope to see you next time we do a live stream. I'll give you a preview. Not only am I going to be up in 2 weeks, topic yet to be determined. You'll see me post about it on LinkedIn. I'm also going to do a new second live stream series with my colleague, Sarah Canaday, about tough situations managers face and how we might deal with them, with her and I co-hosting and talking and riffing about some solutions to these types of problems. I hope to see you on that stream. And again, when will we do it? The first one is December 8th, but you can always just check on my feed on LinkedIn to see what I'm up to and tune in if you have time. Thanks. See you next time.